I remember that day vividly. My friends and I had been searching for something new and exciting to spice up our weekend game nights, when we stumbled upon an old board game in a dusty corner of an antique shop. We were intrigued. The game was vintage, its box adorned with mysterious symbols and faded illustrations. The shopkeeper, a frail old man with a knowing look in his eyes, seemed hesitant but eventually sold it to us with a cryptic warning. Be careful with this one. It's not just a game. We laughed off his words, eager to explore our find. That evening, we gathered at my apartment, the excitement palpable as we set up the game. The board was intricate, with winding paths and ominous figures. The rules were unconventional, involving strange rituals and cryptic instructions. Despite our skepticism, we decided to dive in, thinking it would be a fun way to spend our evening. The game began innocently enough. We took turns rolling the dice and moving our pieces across the board. Each move was supposed to lead to a new challenge or mystery. But as the night wore on, things began to take a disturbing turn. The challenges became more sinister, involving dark and unsettling themes that made us uneasy. Then, things started to happen. Small, seemingly random events began occurring in our apartment, shadows moving on their own, eerie sounds, and sudden drops in temperature. We brushed them off as coincidences, but the feeling of unease grew stronger with each passing hour. As we progressed further into the game, the events began to escalate. One of my friends, Jenna, landed on a particularly ominous space that instructed her to face the darkness. Within minutes, she experienced a terrifying vision of a shadowy figure reaching out to her. She screamed, and we rushed to her side, but the vision was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Desperation set in. We tried to quit the game, but every time we attempted to stop, the board would reset itself, and we found ourselves forced to continue. The rules were clear: finish the game or face the consequences. The horrors intensified as we played on. Objects in the apartment started moving on their own, and we began to experience strange, unexplainable phenomena. Each roll of the dice seemed to manifest a new terror, bringing our worst fears to life. We were trapped in a nightmare of our own making, with no way to escape. One by one, we faced our deepest fears. The game's malevolent influence seemed to prey on our anxieties, using our personal insecurities against us. It was as if the game knew us better than we knew ourselves, exploiting our weaknesses to cause the maximum amount of fear and distress. In the end, the only way to break the cycle was to confront the game head-on. With trembling hands and racing hearts, we made a final, desperate attempt to finish it. The board game's final move was a choice: to either escape or be consumed by the darkness. We chose to escape, and as we made our final move, the apartment fell silent. The board game vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving us in a state of shock and disbelief. We were left with the haunting memories of that night, our minds scarred by the horrors we had endured. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that the game is still out there, waiting for its next players to fall into its cursed trap. The experience changed us forever. We never spoke of that night again, and the board game remains a chilling reminder of the dark forces that can be awakened by seemingly innocent games. I hope this story serves as a warning. Sometimes, the things we find in the shadows are best left undisturbed. Months passed, and life returned to a semblance of normality. Yet, there were moments when I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, shadows that seem to move on their own, or inexplicable cold spots in my apartment. I tried to rationalize these occurrences, attributing them to stress or fatigue, but deep down, I knew better. One rainy evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I received an unexpected package. It was an old, weathered box with no return address. Inside was the same board game that had terrorized us months ago. My heart raced as I recognized the faded symbols on the box. It was the same game, and it seemed to have returned to haunt us once more. I tried to ignore the package, but its presence weighed heavily on my mind. I knew I couldn't leave it untouched. Something about it felt like a challenge, a taunt from the dark forces that had once ensnared us. So, I decided to investigate. That night, I set up the game alone, examining it with a mix of dread and curiosity. The board was exactly as I remembered it, with its intricate paths and ominous spaces. The dice and game pieces were in place, waiting for someone to play. As I unfolded the rules, I noticed something different: a new instruction on the back of the rulebook, written in a scrawled, almost illegible hand. The instruction read: to break the curse, one must complete the game as it was intended. But with a twist. The game is not just played, it must be understood. The true challenge lies in facing what it reveals. Driven by a mixture of fear and determination, I began playing the game once more. As the dice rolled and the pieces moved across the board, I could feel the familiar chill in the air. The rules became increasingly bizarre, demanding that I confront personal fears and solve cryptic puzzles that seemed to delve into my own psyche. The game's malevolence was palpable. As I progressed, I encountered visions and manifestations that were deeply personal and unsettling. Each challenge seemed designed to exploit my deepest anxieties and regrets. The game was not just a physical object, but a conduit for something far darker and more insidious. The turning point came when I landed on a space that required me to make a confession of my darkest secret. I hesitated, but the game's influence was too strong. As I spoke the truth, the room around me began to distort. The walls seemed to close in, and shadows danced menacingly. My confession seemed to fuel the game's power, bringing my worst fears to life. In that moment of terror, I realized that the board game was more than just a cursed artifact. It was a living entity that fed on human emotion and fear. It thrived on the personal struggles of its players, using their vulnerabilities to perpetuate its curse. Determined to end the torment, I resolved to finish the game, no matter the cost. I navigated through increasingly horrific challenges, each more harrowing than the last. I faced my fears head-on, confronting both the game's malevolent force and the demons within myself. As I reached the final space on the board, the game demanded one last act of courage. It instructed me to destroy it, to shatter the board in pieces beyond recognition. I hesitated, fearing the potential consequences, but I knew it was the only way to break free from the curse. With trembling hands, I smashed the board game to pieces. The room erupted in a cacophony of supernatural chaos, objects flying through the air, ghostly wails filling the space. It was as if the game's very essence was fighting back, unwilling to be defeated. As the tumult subsided, I found myself alone in a silent, darkened room. The board game was gone, leaving only scattered fragments in its wake. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a sense of calm replaced the terror that had dominated my life for so long. In the aftermath, I could finally breathe freely. The nightmares and shadows that had haunted me seemed to dissipate. I never spoke of the game or its horrors again, keeping the experience locked away as a dark chapter in my life. To this day, I wonder about the board game's origins and its true nature. Was it a mere artifact of malevolent forces, or was it something more, an ancient relic of a darker reality? I may never know for sure, but I have come to accept that some mysteries are best left unexplored. The curse of the board game is over, but its lessons remain. Sometimes, the things we find in the shadows are best left undisturbed, and some secrets are too dangerous to uncover. I hope my story serves as a warning to those who seek thrill and adventure in the unknown. Be cautious, for some games are more than they seem, and some curses are never truly broken